Let's turn our sights down to the streets of downtown Chicago yesterday to see how things were looking. Oh, I love that banner. Feminists and LGBTQ plus people for a free Palestine. Who wants to tell them? The Democratic National Convention begins today in Chicago, and well, it's going to be a complete and total nightmare. Here's an example. Last night, there was a big pre-convention event at the Navy Pier in Chicago. This was to welcome all of the delegates, and well, somehow, some pro-Hamas terrorist protester made her way up to the stage.
Y'all can do better than that. Mike DeMoney!
150,000 people are dead. You are funding a genocide. The Harris-Biden administration keeps owing money to Israel.
The use of the face mask was probably my favorite part of this. Was she afraid she was going to catch something from the microphone, or was she afraid she was going to distribute something to the microphone? Or is she afraid somebody's going to recognize her and ruin her life and career? Oh, sorry, we got your eyes, so we're going to figure out who you are. Anyway, really good security there. What could go wrong? And on the streets, it wasn't any better. Take a look at the security perimeter that's been set up outside the United Center.
We're just 2 days out from the Democratic National Convention that's going to be held at the United Center right there. It's behind the security perimeter, those barricades all around the security perimeter here. And you can see that police are already monitoring the area. There's some Chicago police officers right there. And we even hear a helicopter up in the sky as well. So there is a lot of preparation already in place. And over here, you can see the Chicago Department of Sanitation has some trucks. We've seen those trucks in other areas around the perimeter as well, just to make sure that no other cars can get through. And they are manning some of those trucks. There's someone that's inside that truck over there. I spoke with one of the people who was manning one of those sanitation trucks on the other side of the United Center, and they tell me that they have been working long shifts, 16-hour long shifts, and their plan is to just make sure no one tries to get through the security perimeter. And if they do, they will call 911 dispatch immediately to get police attention. So we know that there's tens of thousands of protesters expected to march on the DNC, but they won't be able to get as close to the United Center, which is over there, as they would like. So should be an interesting few days. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, that's for sure. And it's a heck of a security perimeter, and good reporting. They're laying it out there for us on how they're trying to keep the protesters all the way out, but they're not going to be able to completely. In fact, there will definitely be pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel protesters in the arena itself at the convention, and I'm expecting a demonstration of sorts during the proceedings. I'll explain that in just a moment. But let's turn our sights down to the streets of downtown Chicago yesterday to see how things were looking. Oh, I love that banner. Feminists and LGBTQ plus people for a free Palestine. Who wants to tell them? Do you want to be the first to tell them? Who's going to break it to them? How completely moronic are these people? And thank you to the folks at Tim Pool's Timcast for that video. Good stuff on the scene there. Really good citizen journalism, by the way, going on in Chicago this week. And we'll be utilizing a lot of their video here at Town Hall and on this show as well. If you scanned the posters and banners there, you saw this was a combo platter of protests. You had your LGBTQ rights people with their flags, right? That's a beautiful flag, isn't it? Boy, it's just... Then you had your pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist, anti-Semitic protesters. And then if you looked really carefully, you also saw the abortion on demand crowd, the people who wanted to make sure that women can kill their babies anytime they want in their womb. All combined in the same march. because Democrats. And there's our friend Tony Knesset was down there as well. Is it Knesset or Knesset? Tony
Kinnett.
Kinnett. I love Tony. He's a Heritage guy, Daily Signal guy, and also on WIBC in Indianapolis. He was
We'll bring the war home. Piggy, piggy, go home. We'll bring the war home.
Piggy, piggy, go home, or we'll bring the war home. They all feel like they're in some Oliver Stone Vietnam movie. It's amazing how they've romanticized that era so much that they're trying to use the same language. But it's a shock, isn't it, that the Wisconsin State Police Union just endorsed Donald Trump over the Democrats? Because the whole piggy, piggy, go home, or we'll bring the worm. That's good stuff, isn't it? Meanwhile, this is how Politico. So that's what's happening in Chicago. Here's how Politico reported today on the beginning of the convention. Democrats arrive in Chicago as a party lacking drama. Oh, really? They're disciplined, orderly, and united around VP Kamala Harris, and more to the point, thwarting former President Donald Trump's restoration. Read the column. No drama there. Just pro-terrorist protesters marching through the streets. We had pro-abortion enthusiasts dressed up like the abortion pill, like they were some sort of weird mascot at a soccer game or something. No drama in this party. Yeah, it's amazing how there's no drama. They literally just forced their nominee off the ticket in a silent coup and handpicked his successor without one person casting a vote for her. But Politico marvels how there's no drama. It's amazing when you're a totalitarian how you can, stamp down the drama whenever it starts to flare up. Say what you will about Stalin, but there wasn't a whole lot of drama, right? Good old Politico. Yeah, there's no drama there. No drama in Chicago as the DNC begins. I mean, of course, unless you're a business owner in Chicago. If you're a business owner in Chicago, you got a little bit of drama.
We are on Washington and Wabash outside of a Garland building, which houses a number of businesses, including stores and some restaurants and offices. Now, as you can see behind me, you'll notice that the front of the Garland building is covered in plywood. It's basically covering the windows and the door. And that's to be able to protect the building, and I should say the entrance of the building, from any potential unrest that could happen ahead of the, once the DNC does come around here, since we are anticipating some protests to take place. Now, the Chicago Board of Services says their crews have been busy the last few days boarding up businesses to get ahead of potential damages. Now, so far, they've secured 12 locations around the West Loop, downtown, and Daly Plaza area, with plans to board up additional businesses this weekend as a preventative measure if protests related to the DNC erupt violently.
But no drama. No drama at all. By the way, did you catch this? This is maybe my favorite part of this report. As Caleb Howe at Mediaite points out, this has become such a war zone Chicago has, that these guys who specialize, this is all they do, is they'll come down and they'll board up your business. ChicagoBoardUpServices.com. And I love that this is the best touch here. The original. Don't settle for the copycats. You want the original, because there's so much competition now to get your board up business. So we can board up your business so your windows don't get shattered and you don't get looted. Call the original. Chicago Board Up Services. Hi, I'm Jussie Smollett. You may know me from Maggot Country at 2 a.m. outside the subway. When I instigate race riots, I always call the original ChicagoBoardUpServices.com. That's phenomenal. I love America. I love capitalism. I love the free market system. I love that in Chicago, some entrepreneurs decided, hey, let's make a business out of it. Don't settle for the copycats, though. You want the original. It's so bad in Chicago at the DNC this week, and it's going to be so bad, that the junior senator of Pennsylvania, which, by the way, is a state, last I checked, the Democrats kind of need to win. Not just for the presidency, but also Bob Casey is in the fight for his political life there, and that could be one of the races that swings the majority in the Senate. And John Fetterman, their senator, I mean, he was the darling of the midterms in 2022. He was a rising star. He won't be going. He won't be going to the DNC because the Democrats are so anti-Israel. Now, I think it's fair to pause for a moment before we continue on the Fetterman discussion to reflect on the fact that Chicago is going to be a mess. There's going to be violence. There's clearly the businesses think there's a threat to them because they're all getting their businesses boarded up and closed down. We've already had an incident at an official DNC event last night where the woman ran up on the stage, as I showed you. And let me explain to you how the protests are going to happen inside the arena as well. You see, during the primary season, the Democrats created such an authoritarian atmosphere that no legitimate candidate really ran against Joe Biden in the primaries, right? They tried to stack the deck. There would be no debates. And even when RFK Jr. was trying to run, they set up these rules where if he ran in New Hampshire before South Carolina, then he wouldn't be able to keep his delegates. And they tried to strong arm him. And that's why he went independent instead of running as a Democrat. But some states allowed for a line item on the ballot to be uncommitted, okay, during the primary. So you could vote for Biden, you could vote for what's her name, Williamson, the crystal guru woman, right?
Marianne.
What's your first name?
Marianne.
Marianne Williamson. Thank you, Marianne Williamson, or I think there was one other guy running for the Democrat nomination. You could vote for them, or you could basically like voting none of the above. But because it's a primary, this actually triggers a party apparatus item where you vote. And this happened in Minnesota. This happened in Michigan and a couple of other states, but certainly in Minnesota and Michigan, you voted for uncommitted. And people thought that was just a protest vote, which it was. It was a protest vote against Joe Biden, but it was specifically picked up in those two states, Michigan and Minnesota, by the pro-Hamas wing of the Democrat Party, which is growing. It's growing big time. And they were the ones who pushed for uncommitted. And it triggered an apparatus in those states' Democrat parties when assigning delegates to the convention. If uncommitted got a certain amount of the vote, and I think in those two states, it got something like 20% of the vote, they actually sent delegates to the convention starting today in Chicago that are uncommitted. There are delegates who are not committed to Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or anyone. They are literally uncommitted, and they were sent there as a protest vote against Israel and against the Biden policies in the Middle East to support Hamas. They will get through that security perimeter you saw. They will be in the room. They will be in the United Center participating in the Democratic National Convention as uncommitted delegates, as pro-Hamas delegates. It's going to be a shit show. There will be protests and demonstrations during the convention. I guarantee it. They've created a mess for themselves. But, you know, Politico reminds you that there's no drama. All right, so back to John Fetterman here, who's decided that because his party has become so pro-terrorist and has thrown one of our most important allies in the world under the bus, he doesn't want to have anything to do with it. So he will not be going to the Democrat National Convention, which I think is a big, as our friend Carol Markowitz at the New York Post says, it's a BFD. And at the same time this story broke, we've got this other story. Do you know the publication on this one, Kevin? Was this Axios?
I believe it's part of that.
Oh, is it part of the
Free Press?
Oh, Free Press, from the Free Press article. Where, well, I'll just read it for you. After his interview with the senator, Peter's phone rang. It was Fetterman's communications director. The communications director is like Karine Jean-Pierre, right? Communications director for a senator is the person who handles the media and is in charge of delivering statements on behalf of the candidate or elected official and basically communicating the congressman, the senator, or the president's message to the media. That's their job. All right. Their job is basically to speak on behalf of the candidate. So, Carrie Adams, the communications director, who wanted to make clear that she doesn't agree with her boss on Israel and Gaza. So she gave a quote to the reporter contradicting her boss, the senator, and said, I want this to go on the record. Put this quote in your piece. Quote, I have a sense that his international views are a lot less nuanced than my generation, because when he was growing up, it was might makes right. And for my generation and younger, who of course are the ones protesting this, they have a much more nuanced view of the region, said the 30-something Adams of the 55-year-old senator. It was an astonishing moment. As Peter writes, I've been a reporter since the summer of 1998 when I covered Bill Clinton's trip to Martha's Vineyard for the Vineyard Gazette. This was the first time I'd ever encountered anyone on Capitol Hill or anywhere else, on the record, off the record, on background, whatever, criticizing the principle. Not just criticizing, actually wanting to go on the record to deliver a statement contradicting the man she works for. But this is how insane it is over there. This is how insane it is for the Democrats right now. And this is the week that we're about to have over in Chicago. One other noteworthy item I think is worth saying, and that is as Chicago prepares downtown for riots and potential looting and violence and mayhem, and businesses are being boarded up by using the original board up services, and there's grave security concerns there. Isn't it fair to reflect on the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee just 4 weeks ago? Now, I know Politico wants you to believe that the Democrats have no drama coming into Chicago, but boy, you talk about a well-run convention that was incredibly smooth, well-managed, no drama in any way whatsoever, no surprises. Everything went off like a dream. And there were no violent protests. There was no screaming in the streets. No businesses in downtown Milwaukee had to board up their windows for fear of looting or violence. Why is that? Think about it for a minute. I mean, it's not like the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic protesters who are, living and urinating in the streets of Chicago today have any fond thoughts about Republicans. It's not like they think Republicans are great, right? And if anything, Republicans are even in more support of Israel and more anti-Hamas than the Democrats are. So why are they in Chicago and why weren't they in Milwaukee? Well, if you think about it, it actually makes quite a bit of sense. You see, what's the point of going to Milwaukee? Republicans are never going to do anything for you. You know they're not. They're not going to knuckle under. They're not going to bend. They stand on principle. They have a moral certitude that Israel is on the right side of this fight. And Donald Trump has made no secret of the fact that if you want to be friends with America when he is president, you better make friends with Israel. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem. He pulled funding from Hamas in the West Bank. He pulled funding and cut off money to Iran to make sure that they couldn't fund terrorist activities. He destroyed ISIS. And by sending those clear, strong signals to the world, he actually ended up engineering peace agreements with Arab nations and Israel known as the Abraham Accords. So they can scream and protest and loot and burn things down all they want up in Milwaukee from the Republican National Convention. It ain't going to make a damn bit of difference. The reason they're in Chicago is because the Democrats actually care about these dirtbags. They actually could change policies. They actually have some leverage with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. So they're using their threatening violent tactics, like good terrorists do, to try to modify the policy and to try to win the day. They're basically trying to blackmail the Democrats. You do what we say, and we're going to be loud and we're going to be noisy and we're going to be ruining Chicago on your big week. You do what we say, or else say goodbye to all those votes in Michigan. It's pretty despicable. And it's an eye-opener for you if you're still on the fence and wondering who you should vote for. I mean, I don't know about you, but I prefer not to be on the side of terrorists. Murdering, raping terrorists. Like Hamas. And all the people who are flying those flags that you saw in Chicago. It's food for thought. And it really tells you where the Democrats are right now. And you know what's even more amazing about this? It could very well work. This week at the DNC, you may see Kamala Harris come out with a brand new foreign policy when it comes to Israel. And that would be, it'd be terrible for our country. But certainly clarifying for November.